The back with us again, our clinical social worker. We've got Melena. Now Melena's here. We're gonna jump right into this. Melena, big news coming out of the whole video game addiction scene, right? So, video game addiction is supposedly a real thing. We had you on the show before. We talked about how it's not like official disease, and there's a lot of that has to do with a lot of insurance issues and things like that, and how people would be diagnosed and what you could say about it. But according to some articles that have just been thrown out there that are very, in my opinion, like I said, scare tactics towards parents, I would say. These articles are coming out by the World Health Organization, and they're claiming that it is now real, and it goes into effect January of 2022, which I believe Jay finds hilarious, and it's weird that they've like set a date.
Well, it's just like it doesn't exist before, right? Like we've got a couple months that we're leading into it, and they're like, we just got to get like a certain number of people to have this condition. Then it becomes for real, for real. And so until that condition's met, it's not going to happen. So January 1, that's a good date for it to finally be recognized.
I mean, maybe it's the case that they just forgot to hit the record button on the first half of the year. You know.
You know, it happens to the best of us, but everyone pays, right?
All right, so Melena, we're gonna stop talking and let a professional kind of jump in here. Like I said, I do want to give a big shout out to Quick, who is our chief researcher, as I think maybe we'll give him a title for Last Choice Network. He researches a lot of different topics for us, pulls up all kinds of articles. For those on the YouTube and the podcast platforms, if you're more interested in the articles that we're pulling some of these information from and what we're kind of looking at, we're going to link all of that in the descriptions to this episode. So, Melena, kind of take it away. Explain to us who is the World Health Organization and
Yes.
why they're waiting till a certain date and what the heck is going on.
I can't speak to why they wait till that date, other than I know that things are updated like at a certain time. So more likely than not, this isn't the only thing that's getting put in January 2022. There's probably a whole list of things. But I do want to bring up the fact that it is the World Health Organization. So this is like taking pockets of different little, like all the different countries, like globally, have, and it's an organization that is created by the UN, and so they've kind of come together and done the research and looked at treatments and looked at symptoms and how it's interfering with people's lives and that kind of thing, and come up with this. So just like so when you talk about scare tactic, just like like within your community, if there was some kind of initiative where it was like different little cities were getting together to talk about social issues or talk about health issues, they would look so different, even within our communities, even within the region that you live. And so globally, you can imagine even more so. So there's some pockets in some countries and some, that have different issues and things going on. So just thinking about it like that, it's not, I'm not saying the United States has a lesser or greater whatever, but just understand that the World Health Organization is looking at it as a whole global problem. So some countries have, more prevalence than ours.
All right, so before we dive into it a little bit more and kind of what it means and what to look out from on a professional side of things, I want to give Jay and Kia a chance because you guys both have kids that play video games yourselves. I know you guys play video games, so you're comfortable with kind of taking things away or limiting them, but a lot of people still are not, and they don't really understand how it works. So can we just kind of go over what you guys do and what you deal with, and Kia, we'll start with you. And also, I'm just curious if you guys find this annoying that they have these kind of like clickbaity scare tactic articles, or do they make you scared as well?
Do you want to go? Okay, I'm going first.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should be scared of it. I mean, obviously, do your own research. As a parent who games and has a gaming child, it doesn't scare me. Um, you're the parent, you kind of have the choice to limit your children. And even if you go, well, I don't know anything about gaming because I don't game. Okay, cool. Find something out, figure it out, go do the research and see what works best for you. If you're that worried about your child being addicted, then put a time limit on. Say they can only have so much time. It's just like screens are we're more nowadays, we're more involved on the screen. Like, we play video games, we're constantly on, whether phones. For me, as a parent who homeschools, my son has a tablet. It helps us with schoolwork. So nowadays, it's more of a modern thing. Like, we're just so used to having that technology. Put a limit on the screen time. My son's tablet has a limitation. He has to do so much educational stuff on his tablet before he has access to playing any type of games on his tablet. So with advancements of technology, we're going to be more involved in technology, and there's ways to limit your kids. There's a way to limit that. So do that. Don't be scared of it. Do the research. Click on the links if you want to, and go read the article. Don't just read the title. I can't tell you how many times people are like, "Oh my God, did you see this?" I'm like, "Did you even read the article? Like, did you even read it?" So honestly, it's like that. But I see modern days. Well, it's just like with ADD. I mean, how long did it take the WHO to recognize that as a problem? And it's going to take a while. I don't necessarily think, I don't know, it's kind of like with gambling. It's an addiction, right? Gaming can be becoming an addiction. If it's not, I don't know. I say that because I have my sister ran into this problem earlier. She was telling me a kid that she knows, if he's told he's not allowed to play a game, he will literally cry and pitch a fit over it. Now, we're talking about a teenager, okay? His mother or father, neither one of them are in his life. They don't give him any type of attention. They don't do anything with him. And to me, that screams that child, that game is the only interaction he gets. So of course he's going to cry when it's taken away. His only interaction with real people is taken away. He doesn't have that with his parents and stuff like that. So in a way, I kind of agree with the APA on this. It can also be an underlying issue. It's not just something to do with gaming. Like, there's an underlying issue that they're dealing with. I know for someone like me who deals with depression, gaming's a way for me to get out of my own head. So it's a way for me to do it, something like that. So I can see it both ways. It can be an addiction, and I can also be considered not an addiction. It just depends on how you take it as a parent. What, son?
And Jay, what about you?
I ain't scared. Reason why, but I have a distinct advantage because we've been doing the Parents versus Gaming podcast for a while, and our special guest Melena was actually on and explained why I shouldn't be scared. And so I pay attention. And then also, on a side note, big shout out to Quick for actually educating me. Quick, you'd be very proud of me. I actually did read the research this time instead of just going in and shotgunning in the room like an idiot. So it's really interesting, and it's the clickbaity titles I'm not very concerned about as well, just because every time I've gone onto WebMD, I've ended up with cancer. So I'm not really too concerned about doing my own research. So I really want smarter people than me, because if we're relying on me to make the judgments on psychological disorders and treatment and everything like that, we've got major issues. So I'm glad that people smarter than me in an organization have actually been paying attention. And I guess, my big question, this is going to be for Melena, sorry, James, but this is going to be for Melena, is does having the WHO recognize it, does that change anything, nationally? Does it allow the US to be able to research it? Is it something now that everyone just kind of adopts and accepts, and it's something that's going to be a diagnosis that's available in the US now? Or how does the WHO recognizing it kind of affect psychology and treatment and kind of what we know about things here in the US?
Yeah, it's difficult to say how it will impact, how that alone will impact here. I can tell you that right now it is in gaming addiction is in a section in the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual. That's what we use to diagnose psychiatric disorders. And there is a section there, section 3, that is a place for basically areas of interest, if you will. So it's things that we don't have enough research on that we are researching. So it is there and it's been there. And the thing about our DSM is we are very slow to update. And, so so it's just hard to say how it will impact that. But I know, Kia brought up I don't know if I said your name wrong, but anyway, brought up.
No, you said it right.
Okay, I'll just go with it. Okay, so I know Kia just brought up, talking about gambling, and gambling right now is actually the only process addiction or behavioral addiction that is recognized in the DSM. But there are other ones that are very similar, like gaming and sex and shopping. I mean, there's other behavioral addictions that basically they hit the same pathways in the brain that give the same, very similar to alcohol and substances, that kind of thing. So those reward pathways, those reward centers, those are hit in the same way. And also the treatment is pretty similar too. And not only that, but the way that it impairs functioning, which is really what we're looking at. And that's the thing that I think is worth noting is you've got to have, for it to truly be a diagnosis, there's like a list of, I can't remember how many exactly, but you've got to have 5 of those, 5 out of 8 maybe, or something like that, of those symptoms for 12 months, for a whole year. So that's really long. I mean, that's significant. Most mental health disorders don't take that long to rule out. So we're talking about very significant impaired functioning in daily living for over a year. So yeah, it's not, so the prevalence is going to be low in reality.
All right, so I'm scrolling through some of Quick's highlighted notes here, and I'm just kind of curious at some of the studies and everything that they go over, because again, I get back to this I just want to call it what it is. It's clickbait articles that kind of scare everyone. And as you're reading through some of these notes, it talks about that the study is kind of a meta-analysis of 53 research ventures, which happened between 2009 and 2019. Around about 225,000 participants around 17 countries. It goes through, kind of talks about which countries they did, and then it basically says the study compiled 53 previously completed studies and examined similarities in the overall figures, as well as smaller demographic information such as age, gender, and some cultural differences. Then it gets to the end and it says the results. So remember, we're talking, what did I say, roughly 225,000 participants. And for the results, it's saying that the results suggest that the global prevalence of gaming disorder is 3.05%. That figure is lowered to 1.96% when limited to more stringent testing. So, out of 250,000 people, still under 2% of those might be considered to have a gaming addiction. So, I think it's important to people that especially the people that don't know, just because your kid cries when you take away the video game or your teenager acts out, like, I mean, I have a 16-month-old, and if I take away his granola bar, he looks at me and wants to swing. So, I mean, does that mean he's addicted to granola bars? I don't know. It's just confusing, and it seems unfair. And then it goes on to the end, Melena, and it says the male to female ratio is 2.5 to 1. I mean, it almost feels like it's singled out, or do you think that's normal, that it should be more males than females? Is that a normal?
I think I was doing some like deeper research, and that I think the difference had to do more with the types of games that are that draw males versus females, just the level of competition and the level of violence can sometimes be more addicting, and the rewards, like just the way that the games are set up that make it just hard enough. And then again, the similar reward as centers in the brain as with gambling. But you do bring up a really good point, and I mean about how that idea of the granola bar and all that, and so I think it's worth bringing up for sure, prevention, or like whatever early warning signs might be that maybe this is like leading down for your own kids, like, is this a problem? When is it just, the kid crying because it's time to leave, the park or whatever, or when is it really a problem? And because prevention really in mental health isn't talked about nearly enough. And that's kind of what I hear you guys talking about right now without like calling it prevention, I guess. And so really the early warning signs are, and this is like this is not just kids, this is all ages, but it's for the first and foremost is lying about it. And like lying about like how much you're gaming, and even lying to yourself about it. Like, oh yeah, I was just doing it for 5 hours or for 2 hours, but like in reality, oh, that was a 5-hour stream. Like, how did that happen? What magic math is that? There's like a time warp or something. But I mean, like, even like lying about how often I'm doing it, how many, whatever hours of the day are spent doing that, and everything in moderation. I know that was a big thing that we talked about last time I was on, because that's true of everything. So definitely like looking at that is like, is there some dishonesty in the game and the amount of time that they're using it? And then also just withdrawing, like they stop talking, they're not hanging out with their friends, or not keeping up with their social activities that they were before. Something like that. If you start to see something like that happening, that's definitely worth looking at. And I know we talked about kind of chicken and egg and the underlying symptoms that look like depression and anxiety. And that is actually one of the symptoms that they look for, is whenever you're not gaming, do we see more symptoms of depression and anxiety? And so it does become a little bit of a gray area where it's like, is the gaming helping or is it hurting? Because when it's taken away, are we seeing this depression and anxiety where I only want, again, the reward centers in the brain and the way those pathways work, they're created to desire that same hit again, that same thing again, or more of that same thing. So yeah, it's a little bit of that part is a little bit of a gray area. And like all addictions, the reason why is because we don't know when we've crossed that point. We, even as the user doesn't know, people watching don't know. We don't know when, at what hour is it like, okay, if I just got him off at that time, would that be the thing? You don't know. You can't see it. So that's why these things are, they're good to look at. And so, and also, by the way, modeling your own stuff, making sure, that if it's important to not have a device at the table, no one has a device at the table, including mom and dad. Make sure that you're living what you're, walk through it with them. And I know it was brought up earlier too about the whole time thing. That's really important, like spending time with the kids. And that's how the best way to show love to a kid. I mean, already. So, but just being aware of the time that they're actually spending. What?
That just sounds exhausting.
That's exhausting. Well, so you brought that up about, again, and I was actually explaining to my son, he's only 6, but man, is he smart. He picks up on every little thing, and kids are sponges. They will pick up on every little thing. I was actually explaining to him because he was upset because I had told him, I said, we're going to start a new routine. We're going to start a new routine in the morning, and we're going to get up, we're going to eat our breakfast, but we're not going to have screens. No TV while we eat breakfast. We're just going to eat breakfast. And then we're going to get started on our schoolwork. And he kind of got upset about it. And I was trying to explain to him, I said, honey, you need to understand, it's very good to take a break from the screen. I said, you know how mommy gets her headaches? I'm wearing my blue light glasses right now. So it's like, I'm explaining to him why it's good to take a break from the screens. And we've actually also noticed that he has started getting headaches. He's 6 and he's starting to get headaches. And I was like, okay, it's really time to start limiting that screen time, because I suffer from headaches. And I know a lot of it's from wearing a headset that's constantly on your head, putting pressure. People don't realize that how much pressure it actually does put on your head. And then also constantly staring at a screen. I get headaches from that. And I started realizing it, and even as an adult, I'm like, man, why am I getting so many headaches? And then I was like, oh yeah, I've been staring at a screen for like days on end. I should probably take a break. So even as an adult, sometimes I forget to take breaks from things, and so I was trying to explain to him that it's good to take those breaks. So we're going to start a new morning routine where we're all going to if we're going to sit down and eat breakfast, we're going to sit down and eat breakfast. No TV, no screens, no nothing. Because what do I usually do in the morning? I get up, I fix him breakfast, but then I come sit down at my computer and I check like my Discord, my email. And so this morning I didn't do that. I was like, you know what? We're not doing this. No screens in the morning. We're gonna do this, and I felt better just for doing that. So it's just sometimes even as an adult we forget but explaining it to him, like trying to, it made me realize, like, yeah, I should really start doing that more.
Now, full disclosure for those listening or watching, if you're a parent that has kind of followed this journey with us and you're like, well, they keep talking, their kids are really young, they probably don't play the same addictive game my teenager plays, or even my own young kids that I've decided to let them play. Full disclosure, they may have younger kids, but both Jay and Kia's kids play games like Fortnite, Minecraft, Apex Legends, and Warzone, and Roblox, which in my opinion might be 5 of the top 10 most addictive games currently out to play right now. And, again, it does help that you guys game and you kind of understand it and you have your own responsibilities, so you kind of translate that. And Jay, I know you can go in a second. I know you're very good at, you take family trips and there's no screens on these family trips. And you've even had to record a podcast where you've had to, jump on to report a Parents versus Gaming podcast, and you sent the rest of the family out so it looked like you weren't on your screen for the 40 minutes that we did an episode. But you try to keep your kids away from that. Now, allowing them to play these games, I know you deal with some of this stuff. Jay, how do you, what are some tips and tricks you might have for somebody, and how do you get around it, and what do you do as a parent that like he is saying and Melena saying, these kids pick up on this stuff? How do you, show what you're preaching?
I really think Kia's onto it is kids are smarter than we give them credit for. I've said it numerous times on the Parents versus Gaming. If you think your kid's not paying attention, you're the idiot out of the two of you.
Yep.
And so, when I'll be in, playing Warzone, getting after it, James, you and I jump on there a lot and stuff. And my son will come in and, obviously it's mic up and, I chat a lot with him while I'm playing with you guys. And, it's just kind of having those conversations. He'd be like, Dad, what are you doing? I'd be like, oh, I've got about 30 minutes before, and I look at my watch, I've got about 30 minutes before it's time to go to bed. And so this is what I'm choosing before I go on to my next activity I need to handle, as a responsible person. And so I'll tell him, be like, look, your bedtime's 7, we need to start moving to bed at 7 o'clock, right? He goes, yeah. I'm like, yeah, it's 6:30. Like, so I've got 30 minutes of this. And then at the end of that 30 minutes, we're on to something else. Like, that was the time that I set aside for it. So for me, it's a lot of budgeting. I set alarms a lot when I play games. So I don't, as Melena pointed out, just time warp into 1 o'clock in the morning. Friday nights, that alarm does not get set. However, the rest of the week and everything, that alarm gets set. And then when I'm with my son or my daughter, I'm with them. So I'm not trying to, check Discord. I'm not trying to do anything. I put my phone in the pocket, like just kind of hang out. But you're right. We do trips where no screens allowed. You can have a screen on the airplane because, dude, there's nothing else to do on the plane. However, once we get out, for me, it's a lot of situational awareness too. It drives me nuts that there's kids that I see in the airport all the time walking while playing Switch. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea what's going, you have no idea what's going on, and you're just zoned out. And it's a major
Zero
issue.
situational awareness.
Yeah, none whatsoever. Running into people, getting smoked by carts, like it's terrible. But that's kind of what we do. And for me, I think there's a larger lesson of whatever you like, you need to put boundaries on that and not let that take over. And the phrase that is said probably in our house more than any other phrase other than go back to bed is, handle your business. And we repeat that. I probably say that 6 or 7 times a day. Hey, you need to handle your business. Hey, whatever you're doing, you need to handle your business, which means that there's things in life that we don't want to do. We don't want to brush our teeth before bed. We don't want to clear our plate. We don't want to, say our pleases and thank yous. And that's handling, and in our house, that's handling your business. And so we talk about it all the time. Hey, I got to get off the game. He's like, why? I was like, I got to handle my business. Like, I got to get you guys to bed. We got to read books. We got to, relax. We got to do everything. But going back to Kia's point, we do have, there's no TV screens allowed in the morning. And then in the evenings, we tell them ahead of time before we turn on the screen. You guys get one episode of whatever PBS show you guys want to watch. So if you guys want watch Wildcrats, you get one. And then at the end of that, we turn off the TV and they have to walk away. And we don't do any screen time about an hour, probably 2 hours before bed either. Because we noticed that they would just be sitting there just zoned out and they're resting. And then when it was time to go to sleep, they were kind of rested, but not really. It was like that weird, like kind of gray area that kids kind of get into where they've laid down and stopped moving enough, but they're still tired, but now their brain and body's kind of recharge. It was like a weird thing. So we try to limit it. We do listen to a lot of music in the house though.
All right, Melena, as we kind of start to wrap this up, I want to give you a chance. I know you did a little bit more research on kind of this whole thing. Is there anything else you kind of want to throw out there that we haven't touched on or you haven't touched on to give us a little bit more information?
Yeah, definitely. I love what I just heard from Jay about just kind of diversifying what what our kids' lives look like, what our families' lives look like. I mean, that's what I heard, and that is so important. Even if it's not fully an addiction, if it's just there's some issues that can come up, because you do have within the gaming world, there is a community, and I don't mean to like knock that or anything like that, because that's very real and it's very helpful and very supportive, and I know it is, but it still doesn't take the place of in-person, real life, face-to-face community. And it shouldn't take the place of it. I mean, it can be there in addition to, but it should never take the place of that. And some of the dangers and some of the things that we run into with that is just having people that are really socially anxious and they don't feel comfortable having face-to-face conversations. There's a lack of empathy. There's a lack of understanding that that what goes on with other humans, and so there's some other issues that aren't, full. There's some issues that are there that are not fully, that can affect us, that are not just addiction and not just addiction related. There are like secondary and tertiary things that can come up too. And the other thing I wanted to mention too, it has to do with treatment, but I think it's worth mentioning because not that you're going to do your own treatment, but just when you understand treatment, it kind of helps, I think, with the whole prevention side, which I know I talked about a little bit earlier. And with the whole chicken and egg thing and modeling the behavior that we want. But the other thing too is that a lot of times when we're talking about this addiction, and I think it was brought up earlier, but I don't think that segment was recorded. But so often what's really going on for any person, is that there's something missing in their life. There's something that's missing that's lacking, and we're latching onto to this online community, or we're latching onto the virtual world that we feel like we're in, or we feel like we're a part of it. And so so that's one of the main things that we would do in treatment, is to find out what that thing is. And I've had I've had success, in my private practice working with individuals, but also the significant others of individuals where, a lot of times it is situational, and it's almost like we outgrow that, because those other whenever we can find out what those other needs are that are not being met, and we can figure out how to meet those, whether that be in the community or within the relationship, or whatever the case may be, a lot of these issues and these, like, the hours that are spent consuming in the gaming, tend to fall away, and a lot of the concerns tend to fall away for a lot of parents and a lot of significant others. So yeah, just thinking about what's missing, what's the real issue, what issues spark this. A lot of times there is something that sparked it, and just kind of working on healing that. And so if the focus is on healing that, this secondary thing tends to take care of itself and tends to fall away once we have healing in that area. And that's true of other addictions as well. But the gaming, whether it's an addiction or not, whether you've crossed over that imaginary line, it can be helpful to seek treatment if you feel like, yeah, that you're avoiding something by doing that. So.
And Kia, as we kind of wrap this up, any closing remarks or questions you might have for Melena?
I don't know. I did notice that in the research that our friend did, he was saying like the overall average was actually of a teenagers, and one of the things is younger kids don't tend to have as many priorities in their life and responsibilities. Like adults, we have jobs, we have kids we have to take care of, things like that. So I think that's another reason why there's probably more research needs to be done as far as whether the APA decides that it's actually a disorder. That honestly, I think that's about it. That's probably another reason why the APA is holding out, is a lot of it's younger kids, people that don't have the responsibility as an adult does. Unless you're an adult that's lost your job because you couldn't stop video gaming. I don't know.
Jay, any final remarks or questions for Melena from you?
No, I'm just really excited, Melena. Thank you so much for coming on. It's nice to have someone who's smarter than all of us put together actually be a guest. And then a big shout out to Quick as well for educating me rather quickly.
No pun intended.
Maybe we should call it like the Quick fact sheet or something like that.
We definitely have some segments coming up for him on some shows pretty soon. I've been working on some stuff with him where he may just butt in and give us the quick moment.
Oh my God! You know what? What was that show where they did it at the end and they're like, "Hey, did we screw up at all?" And they had like the fact checker off to the side. I'll talk to you about it. It was a sports show where they would go back and forth, and then they'd be like, "Well, actually, he
wasn't
was totally
that part
wrong."
of the interruption?
Well, is it part of the interruption?
I thought it was PTI. Yeah. Oh no, you know what it was? It's Around the Horn.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, the original episodes of Around the Horn back when I think Kellerman was doing it, right? So, and then they had the paper toss at the end.
Yeah, because they'd be like, "Oh yeah, no, you were totally wrong on that. Giants haven't won a Super Bowl in I don't know how long."
It was usually yelling at Woody Page.
Yeah, very true about how Cincinnati's never going to win a Super Bowl.
Until this year, buddy. Watch out.
Yeah. Keep telling yourself that, Brady.
Melena, one last thing I just want to ask real quick before we let you go and we say goodbye to everyone. I know that the whole video game addiction thing is a little bit different, and not only are sometimes people quick to judge a kid that might be playing, but when it comes to older kids, I know a lot of this study had to deal with older teenagers or older adults. And, Kia, you had the story with a teenager that's involved and the parents aren't in there. Is there, I know when it comes to like drugs and alcohol and, it's been, those addictions have been around, even gambling, if it's not, gambling addictions are a little bit easier to see in people and you'll have friends that'll kind of speak up. But for those, whether it's a parent or a friend and you're nervous about your friend being addicted to video gaming, what are some simple things that you could look for? And if you do think they're addicted, how do you approach them without making the situation worse? Because it seems like that could be a bad time or very detrimental to them.
Yeah. So the things to look for, I mean, it's not really any different than what we kind of talked about earlier when in terms of like, when I was talking about like what to look for in your kids. I mean, it wouldn't be any different in a friend, so it's looking out for lying. It's looking out for things that they used to do that they aren't doing now. Like any, whether that be like, I mean, I know we talked about a job, which is like kind of a pretty big deal, right? To think about that somebody could lose their job, but hey, it's happened. And I actually have a cousin who almost dropped out of college because she was so addicted to Sims. So, like back in the day. So
there's not really an esports community for Sims, so I don't think you're winning any money playing that game.
It can happen. It can happen, right? So she was like, it was just so fun. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're insane.
Wait, now I want to stop you because you've said this multiple times. You said the lying, this like saying that. I only played for 2 hours, but I played for 5, and that could be a sign of addiction. Now, is there a difference between lying because you're addicted to it and lying because something like video games and a lot of your friends don't like video games and you're embarrassed by
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why you're doing it.
so
If you're not being honest about it.
If you have
Like-
to lie about it to your friend,
Yeah, exactly.
then they're not true friends or you're addicted, because your friends, even if they judge you for being someone who loves to play video games, because I have mom friends that are like, oh my god, you play video games? And I'm like, yeah, what's it to you? Like, what's it to you? I have a life.
Listen, when I was like mid-20s, I lied all the time, but I mean, it wasn't about the hours. It was just about like, what did you do yesterday? I would be like, I watched a movie, but I played video games for an hour. I didn't even play that long, but I was embarrassed. Like my friends hated it.
No, I'm an honest person. You don't like it, oh well. I'll show you the door.
Yeah, there's
To me, there's no point in lying.
No, if you're having, it doesn't matter what's motivating the lie. If you need a referral, I can give you a referral.
Wow.
Calling you out.
All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming by on this episode of Parents vs. Gaming, and thank you guys so much for listening. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been pretty insane. It's been really great. And then the reason why I missed last week was